Once you have some clips all set into your sequence, you might decide that you want to do some special effects. And for me, this is the point at which video editing gets a bit more exciting. I think there's a wonderful joy in the creative art of careful selection of clips and timing and adjusting and the pace and the rhythm of it all. It's like editing a dance. But the effects work is where Premiere Pro just starts to have a bit more pizzazz. The most common transition type you'll ever see is a straight cut, and here's an example of a straight cut. Yep, there it is. If you watch TV or films in the cinema, you're going to see time and time again the straight cut. Now, if you're Lucas, you can get away with having wipe transitions and all kinds of spangly effects, but in the main, you're going to see straight cuts like this one. If there were ever a special effect version of a transition that was the most commonly used, it would be the cross dissolve. In fact, this effect is so common that Premiere Pro has a keyboard shortcut just for that. So, in fact, there are a couple of ways of adding a transition to your clips. Now, when I say transition in this context, what I mean is a special effect transition rather than any kind of transition which would include a straight cut that is not a special effect. I'm going to position my playhead here between two clips, and I'm going to press Control or Command D, and this is going to apply the default transition in Premiere Pro. Now, it just so happens that when you first install Premiere Pro, the default transition is a cross dissolve. So if I play through now, there we go. We've got a nice slow cross dissolve between those two clips. Be aware that this shortcut is dependent on you choosing your tracks first of all. If I undo that and then turn off my video 1 track and just get my playhead near that transition again, if I press Control D, absolutely nothing's going to happen. I can have my other tracks turned on, nothing. I'm pressing Control or Command D, no effect at all. If I turn back on my video 1, now the keyboard shortcut works. So you do need to keep an eye on these track header buttons. The entire track header section of the timeline is actually a record, enable, or disable, or an allow or not allow button. The whole thing is a button. So that's adding a transition by using the keyboard shortcut. If I go to my little navigator here along the top of my project panel, and you may not have this if your screen has got a much higher resolution than mine, I've got an Effects panel. If you don't see this, go to the Window menu and choose Effects. Notice that this has the Shift 7, the number 7. This will be along the top keypad rather than the numerical keypad on the right-hand side of your keyboard. That'll take you straight to the Effects panel. On the Effects list, I've got a series of presets, audio effects, transitions, video effects, and transitions. I'm going to expand video transitions, and then I'm going to expand dissolve, and you can see there is cross dissolve. If I want to apply this cross dissolve between two clips, I click on the icon and drag it over across to where I want it to go. And you can see I get a highlight here, and when I let go, there it is applied to my clips. I can also, if I want to, drag this over and choose if I want it to go ending at the cut, centered on the cut, or beginning at the cut. Again, this is just a purely creative choice. If I put this way over here on the end of my series of clips and have this end at the cut, there we are. It's going to look like this is a fade to black, but be warned, this isn't really a fade to black. This is actually a fade to transparent. And just to illustrate what I mean, let me zoom out a little bit. I'm just going to go to my Tools panel here. Now, each of these tools are for working with your timeline in one way or another, and most of them are for adjusting the duration of your clips. I'm going to select the second tool here, the Track Select tool, and I'm going to click on the first clip. And the Track Select tool chooses everything on that track from this point forwards. You can see here, for example, I'm choosing this clip and it's taking every clip after it. Coincidentally, if I hold the Shift key down, you'll see I get a double arrow. That's going to choose every clip. So from that point forward on every track. I'm going to click with this tool and drag up so that I've got a gap underneath these clips. And I'm going to go back to my Selection tool, which is the keyboard shortcut V. I'm going to go to my Project panel, expand out my list of clips, and I'll just pick any one of these and drag this underneath. You see I've got a problem here though. My audio is going to overwrite the audio for my original clip. So I'm just going to pull down after the clips and then navigate across a little bit, drag down my audio, and then pull this back underneath. Now I've got my clip in the foreground. There it is in the foreground. I'm dragging through. This Joe and Alicia shot is underneath on video 1, but I can't see it because the See You Joe Rides Into Frame shot is above it and in front. As I drag through and we come to the cross dissolve, you can see my foreground shot up in my program monitor. You can see that is fading away to reveal the Joe and Alicia putting on their helmet shot. If I move this out of the way, you can see this looks like a fade to black. It's not a fade to black. It's a fade to transparent. And now I can see that shot that's underneath it and therefore behind it on the timeline. So just be aware of that. When you create a cross dissolve to nothing, which is what I've done here, you're effectively creating a cross dissolve to transparent. I'm just going to put another shot on here. I'm just going to drag and drop this straight onto the timeline because I want to show you back in my effects panel. Of course, there are many transition effects available. I could, for example, choose a slide. So if I do a band slide and throw this on between these two shots, you can see I've got, there we are, a band slide transition between those two clips. Or if I want to replace a transition effect, maybe I'll get a push. I'll just drag this on top of the transition effect that's already on the timeline. And now you can see, there we go, it's pushing one clip out of the way with the other. Now, what you do with your creative work is entirely up to you. But my advice is, if you possibly can, get it out of your system early. Use every effect you can on the first project you work on and just have a play and look at it. But remember that too many transition effects and too many spangly 3D animation effects, they're going to remind the audience that they're watching a film and they're not going to lose themselves in the story as much. That's my only advice, is to think about the journey you give to your audience. But adding transition effects, it's very much a question of dragging and dropping or pressing Control or Command D, and the default transition effect will be applied. If you want to change the default transition effect, choose the one you want, right-click on it, and choose Set Selected as Default Transition. You'll notice as well that when you apply a transition, it has a default duration, and that is under your Preferences. Under General, that's under the Premiere Pro menu on macOS. This is a Windows machine. And right at the top here, Video Transition, Default Duration, Audio Transition, Default Duration. Notice that one's in frames and one is in seconds. So that's adding transition effects to your video in PremiereProCS6.